God of War Ragnarok, one of the most anticipated games of the century, and the finale to the 17-year running franchise of the same name. I spent years waiting for this game's release, ever since I bought God of War 2018 in 2020, and it's one of the very few games my broadcast is actually willing to pay full AAA price for a pre-order to play it immediately on release, instead of waiting 3 more years for either a sale or the price to drop by a few dollars. Does this game live up to the heavy expectations placed on it? Does it deliver the closure that the God of War franchise deserves? And more importantly, is it worth your time and your money? Now, personally, I usually like to be thorough and experience everything a game has to offer in the way it was intended to be experienced. And so, we'll follow a systematic approach of sorts, and rate the game on 3 different aspects: its gameplay, audio visuals, and storyline. There's honestly so much to talk about on all fronts that I find myself at a loss on where to begin. Let's start with the visuals. God of War Ragnarok looks absolutely gorgeous in its terrain and attention to detail. There's so much clear effort that went into designing these realms, breathing life into them, all while making them very distinct from one another. Midgard, years later, is now this frozen land with snow as far as the eye could see, giving it this dreary vibe that fits perfectly with what you'd expect from Fimbulwinter. But then, you unlock realm travel and see that Svartalfheim, the land of the dwarves, is a land rich with natural resources, geysers and mines full of ore wherever you look. You get to see a completely different side to Alfheim as well, this desolate desert born after years of neglect due to the elves' vanity. Vanaheim is ripe with wildlife and exotic plants that like to spit poison at you. Niflheim now has this big-ass tree, and Asgard will take your breath away with its classic fantasy feel and bright colors. And even outside of the overall realm design, there's always something on the side that would catch your eye. Wildlife, enemy patterns, all of it complemented beautifully by the accompanying soundtrack. God of War Ragnarok reaches its peak in the way it delivers this atmospheric experience that would always leave you wanting for more, and you will always find something more waiting for you right around the corner. Remember this guy from God of War 2018? That one boss that you had to fight 16 different times? Well, he's back in Ragnarok, and here's how that fight went.
Get up! Father! A troll?
Boy.
Santa Monica Studio has knocked this game out of the park with the sheer amount of enemies and bosses in this game. Every main story boss is now unique. The one in Chapter 13 of the main story, Creatures of Prophecy, easily being the best one the game has to offer for me, and believe me, you'll know when you get there. And don't even get me started on the side bosses, where now every dang step you take leads you to a new enemy with completely unique movesets and mechanics. So while your basic strategy of parrying and attacking during openings doesn't really change, the way you tackle each boss will always be different. There's these green goblins that show up when you stab their gravestones that will beat the shit out of you for doing that. Sleeping trolls that you would learn how to rouse from an eternal slumber if you paid just a little bit of attention to some of the lore pieces that you collect, all of which provide some really interesting backstories and information on these archaic locations that you visit. Each realm now has a main side quest that affects the environment around you in a way you would never expect, with its own unique payoff. There's so much to see, so much to learn and explore, and you'd honestly have more luck finding yourself a winning lottery ticket in yesterday's trash than you would a boring moment in this game.
What? You okay there, Atreus? What? 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 That wasn't even an attack! He just turned!
I played this game fresh out of its prequel, God of War 2018, and in the first few minutes of this playthrough, there's this very noticeable change to the game engine. Everything from the character models, their movements, how the camera controls feels very distinctly different than its predecessor. Now, in God of War 2018, the combat flow, the way you move, attack, even in the enemy movements, there's always this very satisfying weight that you get to experience as visual feedback. But when making an immediate comparison, something I could not help but make with how short the gap between my playing of both games was, I could honestly describe the combat as floaty. To me, this could be a game killer. You still retain the same basic moveset and attack patterns, and apart from resetting your equipment, you still have everything you earned, story-wise, from the prequel. You immediately have access to both the dual blades and the Minecraft axe, giving you a lot of variety in how to tackle fights. But that floatiness I mentioned rears its head in the form of, well, all enemy attacks becoming gap closers. So, while a heavy roll should by all means get you out of range of a 3-hit combo, here you'd only dodge one and get hit by the follow-up attacks because this guy decided to slide on the floor, betraying that visible momentum to land the cheap hit. Honestly, I was not that impressed until...
Alright, this still give me iframes because I need to know. Damn, dude!
That's where I finally started getting on board with the combat. Dodging can have some very inconsistent iframe timing, which could make an otherwise easy boss fight take several hours to finish. Even with all that being said, it definitely grows on you as you play along and get used to the mechanics. All the more so when you unlock more of the skills that Kratos somehow forgot about while training non-stop for several years. While we're on the mechanical aspect of the game, I want to talk about the difficulty. The game offers you 5 varying difficulty levels ranging from baby mode to god mode. Personally, I'm no super gamer. When I pick up a video game, while a certain degree of challenge is more than welcome, I like to make my initial playthrough more on the casual side, so of course, I chose the easiest one. From the bottom up. And let me tell you, this game does not pull any punches. It will wipe the floor with your ass before handing it to you, and then beat the shit out of it again until you start crying and begging for mercy. Enemies only flinch if you time your attacks to interrupt their own when you're not a same or a higher level. Even the weakest punch from the first few enemies you encounter absolutely melts down your health bar, forcing you to skirt the line between managing your positioning, when to attack when surrounded, blocking and dodging just to stay alive. Wait, what's that guy doing? Did I mention that if you don't press the attack hard enough to make them flinch, which, by the way, is really fucking hard early on, enemies will do this thing where they power themselves up permanently, making all their moves guard breakers, unblockable, they do more damage, take less damage, flinch even less, and if they're low on health, heal up to half their HP. While you can probably stop this borderline sadistic move with a timely headshot with the axe, with how chaotic the mob fights get, as you would more often than not be up against 6 or more of them at a time, they're probably gonna get the power up. This game on the God of War difficulty can feel borderline masochistic for the player. But is it fair? Well, kind of. For me, as a casual player, this difficulty felt sort of challenging, and yet it continued to be mostly fair, and it ultimately felt just right. The learning curve is not too steep, and the process of trial and error makes it feel more rewarding when you finally whoop these assholes that you were stuck on for 6 hours asses. You know, when they don't hit you with dodge roll for the 50th time. Now, don't let the game's title mislead you. You're led to believe that you're following Kratos' journey through the end of times of Norse mythology, but that's actually wrong. The real main character of Ragnarok is actually Boy, and the story is instead a long-winded coming-of-age ceremony. From the get-go, he's this disrespectful, entitled, and impulsive bundle of chaos in a spiffy archer suit. Every step of the way, he follows this hidden agenda of taking the war, to Odin's doorstep, while dragging everyone around him through one disaster after another. He's fully convinced that he can become this champion that leads the charge, that he closes off his ears to every voice of reason around him, which there are a lot of, and continues down this spiral of terrible decision-making.
Atreus, where have you been?
Peeing?
For 2 days.
I...
Do not lie to me again!
For example, later on, he learns of Kratos' death prophecy, the one from the prequel, and how it supposedly happens when he works for Odin, adding yet another reason for war to be the right choice for him. He has been so keen on antagonizing this elder god, starting Ragnarok, being a part of it, that there is no way he would actually work for him ever.
Take me to him.
He fucking works for Odin. Meanwhile, Kratos, having considerably mellowed over the years, is now perhaps the most emotional we've ever seen. He takes a backseat to his son's lead, his only goal being to spend time with him while keeping him safe. He's so forgiving, so protective that he's become far removed from the man he once was. What does Boy think of this change?
If you want me to trust you, then tell me the truth.
The truth is, you're being a complete asshole.
Well, he doesn't like it very much. This entire journey, Atreus makes far too many mistakes, but it's Kratos' forgiveness as his only remaining family that ultimately puts him back on the right track. And I, as a player, began to finally see him as more than just Kratos' son. To me, a good story is one where I can get easily immersed and, by extent, emotionally attached to these fictional characters. And while the writing in Ragnarok does take a more laid-back approach, it's more lighthearted, more comedic, parenting, family, and prophecy, in the sense of taking your fate into your own hands, are the major themes in God of War Ragnarok. And while it does get a bit too on the nose sometimes, it still manages to deliver a rich, powerful experience when it actually matters at the end of the day. Ultimately, I was left with this feeling of emptiness that always comes with finishing a good-ass game. And even though I did find myself wishing for a better way for things to have turned out, I still immensely enjoyed the overall experience. I give God of War Ragnarok a very strong 9 out of 10 on the ball scale, and I will be waiting at the very edge of my seat for the next leap forward from both the developers and the franchise.
Okay, we got it. Alright, Freya. What are you doing? Why are you still attacking? The roots. The roots are here. Hello? The roots are over here. You don't have to keep attacking it. We don't actually have to kill it. You can just get the roots. What are you doing? Freya, the roots.
I have to break his hold on me, and you are in the way!
No, she was not.
So hurtful!
Oh my god. You are a very sick, sick woman.